Well, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's Business Success Series presented by Manulife on the state of the workforce here in Waterloo Region. My name is Ian McLean, and I'm the President CEO of the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce. Before we get started, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge that we do live and work on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples, as we seek a renewed relationship based on a foundation of mutual understanding and respect. As participants in today's virtual event, we are coming together as one. We believe everyone is free to be their true self and receive the same respect and opportunity, regardless of age, ethnicity, gender, culture, identity, sexual orientation, beliefs, or language. We hope you will join us in fostering a positive environment here today that is a safe and welcoming space for all. We know that there is more that we can do, and we are committed to listening, learning, and growing as we go. Today's session would not be possible without the continued support of our sponsors, so a special thank you to the title sponsor of the Business Success Series, Manulife. The platinum sponsor for the series is the Immigration Partnership of Waterloo Region, and November's sponsor, the Waterloo Economic Development Corporation. These organizations are committed to supporting our local economy and providing businesses with the resources and tools they need to thrive. Just before the session starts, I'd like to go over a few quick reminders. Please ensure that your microphone is muted throughout the presentation so we can reduce any background noise. If you have a tech-related question, please comment in the chat section, and a representative of our team will get back to you momentarily. If you have a question for today's speaker, they will be gathered throughout the session, and I'll try and do my best to get those questions to Charlene. And all event attendees will be sent a recording of today's presentation, and it will also be made available on the Greater KW Chamber website. Now, I don't know that I see Tony. He was having some technical, so I will just plow on and introduce Charlene, and then we'll get started right into the presentation. Our good friends at the Waterloo Economic Development Corporation, Tony Lamenti and his gang, are our sponsors for this month, and Tony was going to make that introduction, but we've been having some issues in various places, including yours truly with some technical issues. So Tony was trying to be with us, but not able to join us. But just by way of saying, Tony and his gang are part of the Business Economic Support Team of Waterloo Region, which is the two chambers, Waterloo Economic Development, Communitech, and Explore Waterloo. And Tony and I work very closely together and appreciate his support, not only of economic development in the region, but of his personal support and the support of WEDC for the community, especially throughout the last 20 months. So Tony would be doing this ordinarily, but I'll do it right now. I have the privilege of introducing today's guest, Charlene Hofbauer. Charlene is the Executive Director of the Workforce Planning Board of Waterloo Wellington Dufferin. She brings 11 years of experience in workforce planning and development and is very excited to be leading the organization in its 25th year of operations. Charlene is a strong believer that in order to overcome the challenges presented by today's rapidly changing labor market, we need to work together across communities and industries to identify where we can work together and where we need to find individualized solutions. She brings a wealth of experience and knowledge in human resources, training, program development, and education to her work here in Waterloo Region. So thank you, Charlene, for joining us, and let's just get right to it. We were joking, we were having some issues, you and I, getting in. Tony was having some challenges. It's COVID that we're doing this on a computer, and everything works until the moment it doesn't work. I was remarking just before we got started, I was presenting to Kitchener Council on Monday night, and it only took them 25 minutes to get Zoom connected because Zoom was having a bit of an issue. So we're not alone in this. I appreciate our audience's patience as we took a few minutes to get started. Charlene, thank you for joining us today. And this is a really important topic, especially as we get towards the end of the pandemic and start to, how do we move forward in a endemic world where we still have to deal with it, but we can get back to a more normal circumstance. Let's start right off the top, and this is the top issue that within the chamber we hear about, which is talent is actually the biggest issue. There's inflation and there's a whole range of challenges, but people finding the right human capital is a struggle, and it's a struggle right across sectors. It's not just in hospitality and tourism. So let's start there. What's your sense of where we're at in terms of the labor market right there, maybe at the most general level?
Yeah, just looking very generally, we are struggling. I'm hearing the same concerns, so they're not unique to the chambers hearing them, and our partners all across the community are hearing it. And right now, the struggle is there's just not enough people. Straight up.
Yep.
You know, we got about 350,000 people in the workforce here in Waterloo Region, which is up from January. It's up from pre-pandemic. More of them are working than ever before. We're about 327,000 working. So, you know, it's like everyone's working. So what's the problem? And so if we kind of start digging into numbers, we see that, you know, there's about 22,800 people like last month who weren't working, but were looking for work. They're younger. So there's, you know, a lot of 15 to 24-year-olds are looking for work right now. There's almost 10,000 of them. So, you know, they're very certain specific jobs that they can go into. And then if we look at that kind of 24 to 44, there's about 6,000 of them, 7,000. So, you know, that if you're looking for that more experienced worker, there's a really small pool of them. And those numbers are pretty much in line with where we were pre-pandemic. So the unemployment numbers aren't too bad. But our big area of concern is who isn't participating, like who's not looking for work, who's not working, who's not even thinking about it. And we have about 151,000 people in the region who are just not looking. And in all fairness, some of them are retired, so they're not coming back.
I think that's one of the things that you know probably hasn't got enough ink. And I see it when we were talking before getting ready for this. Something in the U.S. I think they call it the Great Resignation. Is that the nod that a lot of people during the pandemic who were maybe holding on, kind of at retirement age, just said, "I'm done. I don't want to go back." But that's put pressure on, and that would be the same here. I think that's what I hear you're saying here. Is some people have just they've either retired or semi-retired, and they'll take a job if it's the right one in that really suits them, but they're effectively out of the workforce, and that creates a real gap in the system.
It really does. We're seeing that of that like 150,000, about 50% are 65 and older, so they're pretty much gone. But that really key group of 55 to 64, they're on the cusp of retirement, the tail end of our baby boomers. We're seeing them leave. They're at that point where they're like, I'm leaving or I'm staying. I'm not going to be unemployed. So I think when we start talking about making those choices, and the scary part of this, Ian, is that a 55 to 56-year-old is the beginning of Gen X. So we're not even talking baby boomers leaving anymore. We're starting to talk about those early Gen Xers, maybe who are nurses and teachers and have really great pensions and are tired of healthcare and education, saying, you know what, I can collect my pension. I'm done. Maybe I'll come back in a couple of years when it all.
I see you looking at me right now, and I'm not 56. I'm only 53, and I have no intention of retiring. But I think it is true. I mean, you're starting to get folks looking at that. One of the so there's who is looking for work, and you've highlighted that there are people still looking for work, but they must be pretty picky or choosy about where they want to work. We know that if you walk in just about any restaurant or hotel, that they've got to want jobs open sign, help needed or help wanted, but they're having a struggle getting people to take those jobs. Is that just a hangover of the pandemic of saying it's not a reliable sector to be in right now because we've had openings and closures and we know that there, I mean, I guess that's the question. There are jobs available. Why can't those people that are looking for a job, or why won't those people that are available looking for work take the jobs that are out there?
I think there's a couple of things here. There's one, when people look for jobs, they tend to look for, is it a skills fit? Like we did some early pandemic research and we asked people what they were looking for, and like skills fit was number one. So some people might say, oh, I don't have the skills, maybe not food, but there's that piece. So, and our government's been trying to put into place training programs to help that aspect. But the other part of that is the lifestyle changes now that we want. We want, some of us have transportation issues, so location becomes so important. So we can't take a job that's not on a bus route or that's not a certain time when the buses are running. And there's other things like, some people, when we think about the end of the CRB, right? The people who are on it right to the end got their last pay. You get it about 1 to 2 weeks after it ends. So they've just gotten their last pay beginning of this month. So the question is, what did they store up and how long can they wait before they take that job? So these are the sort of issues that are kind of playing in the background as we start thinking about those pieces of why people aren't jumping into those jobs. And some, may be able to make it through Christmas and take, the time off and then decide they're going to look in the new year. So we have that into play as well.
Now, we know there's jobs in the trades that they're unfilled. Those are not, you can't just decide tomorrow that you're going to be an electrician. Certainly I couldn't, and most people couldn't. So some of those skilled trades jobs are there, but there's the skills mismatch or the training that needs to happen. Some of the jobs, whether you're in tech or advanced manufacturing, have a technical or a specific piece to it. Are those also part of the equation of the jobs that are like, we've talked about this pre-pandemic. I think the last time you were on, maybe the last time we were in person at an event, we talked about the skills mismatch and how we were going to address that through training, ongoing training, future of work and learning, how we keep people's skills so that they have the skills needed. Is that part of the issue as well? Is that there's people looking but not having the right skills?
I think that's 100% it. We looked at the job postings last month on findyourjob.ca. And for the first time since we've been collecting it since April 2020, the split between the demand for post-secondary and then that short-term training, on-the-job training sort roles is 50-50. It's always been dominated by those short-term training, on-the-job sort roles. And we're starting to see now that demand is both on the post-secondary apprenticeship side and on that short-term training side. So it's not just, a short-term training would be something like a personal support worker or somebody who's taking like a companion role or a truck driver. So we're seeing that those jobs are now being in demand just as much as those software developers and marketing roles and business development and all those other things that we always knew we're going to grow. And we're starting to see in Waterloo Region that those jobs and that demand is starting to become there. So I think we are seeing that mismatch a little bit.
So you referenced the CERB, the end of CERB, which is Canada Emergency Relief Benefit. I hear you saying we won't really know whether the fact that has basically gone, is no longer in place, whether that spurs some folks over the coming maybe November, December, and into January to get back into the workplace or start looking for work. So that may increase the number of people looking for the many jobs that are available, which would be helpful. One of the other pieces that's happening now, though, and I'm interested in whether you're hearing this from the employers you work with, which is extensive, and you do manufacturers, you deal with employers right across the board, helping them with their issues. The end of the wage subsidy program, which I think by all accounts needs to be certainly refined, but there are many businesses across the spectrum who, while they may be able to be open, not, whether fully or close to fully, who are nowhere near on the revenue side, having the revenues to be fully open and fully recovered. So if many businesses are open and maybe only at 40 or 50% revenue from pre-pandemic, that wage subsidy, it may be the difference or has been the difference between hiring or keeping someone on. I know there's a replacement program. Maybe talk a little bit about that for the business owner that's watching here, saying, hey, look, wage subsidy is gone, but there is a new, I think it's the hiring program. what are you recommending to businesses who are still, and I guess the theme of this is they're, Minto Snyder, a friend from Explore Waterloo, says this all the time, and I think it's the perfect reopening does not mean recovery. There's a lot of territory between the reopening and the fully recovered and getting back to a point where your cash flow is in good shape. What's your advice, or what are you dealing with your clients and your businesses around wage subsidy gone, here's this other program, and how to get the right people so they can ramp up and generate that revenue?
I haven't heard that yet. Minto is probably the one who I've heard it the most from for her industry because they have so much road left to recover. And they've really been struggling across food and accommodation and things like that. But yeah, with that wage subsidy ending, it's going to be really hard on all of those businesses. And I haven't heard about the new hiring program, so I should probably research that one. But my gut feeling going forward is knowing what you can and can't do, and then how you take your current staff and you kind of work them through that process of where you're going. We've tended to find, like, if you're hoping to keep that staff and you're trying to do what you can, keeping that open communication and dialogue with your staff is going to get you a long way, because we've discovered over the past couple of years that that's what people are looking for. So because a lot of them really haven't discussed that piece, because they're so caught up in getting people, and then the supply chain issues are going to start happening if some of the key industries out there don't find people.
So is that one of the I mean, you have the human capital inside your organization is to maybe elevate or promote or offer some of your existing staff the more complex or technical, because you got them there, you can train them on the job, you know the type of person they are, and then backfill some of the more entry level or easier to fill jobs. Is that one of the tools that because I mean there's supply chains even inside a manufacturing, as example, is if not everyone's there, it's really hard to keep the operation going. Is that one of the ways to kind of address that technical shortages?
It could be, yeah. It's like look at who you can move into some of those key roles you have. I've been really encouraging employers to look at what are the key roles in your organization, and then make sure those ones are filled, and where you can use temp agencies, use other staff maybe who could use that reach forward skill set that's easy to develop or can be done through like LinkedIn Learning or Linda or any of those groups. We've kind of gone that route ourselves, where I have a staff person who spoke to somebody and then started learning pivot tables through LinkedIn Learning, and she's getting pretty good. So, there's those pieces that you got to kind of start looking at as an employer and say, what do we need to run? That might be the way to approach for some industries where that's conceivable and possible to do. Smaller industries or smaller businesses may find it more easy to cross train, because that's what we're talking here. We're talking a little about cross training and making sure that people can move into those roles as best as they can to keep the business going until those hiring programs can support more people.
So one of the things that and this is something you and I work on very closely on a regular basis with our friends from the Immigration Partnership of Waterloo Region, is immigrants, newcomers to our community, tremendously underutilized opportunity for businesses for having talent, because there's lots of talented people that are coming from other parts of the world. I know the last 2 years immigration, and this has got to have been part of the problem in terms of those openings. We went from something like 400,000 or 350,000 immigrants per year to effectively zero for 2 years, and that has that knock-on effect of as a source of talent. As we work with the Immigration Partnership and the service providers that are helping them, what's the current situation on that? And I think we should spend a little bit of time on this, because this is not only a short-term opportunity for every business that's watching this or would watch on the podcast, of saying there are organizations that would know where there's a new source of talent that you may not have tapped into before. But what's the situation like with immigration, and is there still that pool of talent available right now?
There is the pool of talent available right now. Keep stumbling over my words. And luckily, StatsCan just did some national data. So we know that visible minorities, which would include a lot of our immigrants, have higher unemployment rates than Canadian-born people. It's about 1.3% more at this point. So we know that they're looking. We know that there's talent sitting there across Canada that's not getting work. And they're eager because we know that their participation rates are higher than Canadian born participation rates. More of them are looking for jobs, more of them are working by about 10%. So they're a highly motivated, talented group that isn't being utilized as well as it could. It's not sitting in positions they could be sitting in. Immigrant populations tend to be younger. So there's another piece. They could work for you longer. They need that first job with Canadian experience. I hired an immigrant just in March, and she's still with us. She's fantastic. I'm so excited, and she's with us till the end of March. And in Canada, their savings only go so far because they're kind of starting over. They've taken that. If you're looking for that adventurous person who maybe is willing to take a little bit of risk, maybe going with an immigrant is the way to go on this one because they've already risked it all to move to Canada and to start over.
So the immigration partnership is a good clearinghouse because they know who the partners are that are working with both immigrants and the businesses that are looking for talent, and they try and do a bit of that matchmaking through the service providers like Agilic, the YMCA. There's a variety of programs. When you're working with those your business owners and the challenges they face, what walk us through what some of the steps would be to make sure you say, oh, you're filling a sheet metal worker or a CAD operator or whatever. How do you make those connections? Because ultimately, what you and I both know is most of the businesses are small or medium size. And we need to make this as easy as possible for them to say, there's resources out there. Here's how we can make a connection and get them the help that they need as quickly as seamlessly as possible.
Yeah, when I get a phone call around these things, I always talk to them and ask them what they're needing. So I really understand what they're needing. So that's always where I start is, what is it that you need? What is it? We got a map code attached to it. What are you paying? And then the next thing I do is say, okay, where are you located? So that I give them their backyard Employment Ontario service provider or immigrant service provider, so that they know that that person's in their backyard. It's really easy to meet. Do an introduction, warm introduction if I can. If I know somebody who's a job developer or something like that at one of those organizations, and say they're going to help you, and they have an extensive network that grows across Waterloo and Wellington. And if there's anybody out there, they will know. Know anybody who's connected. And then after that conversation, if they've gone that route, then the next thing is, okay, have you connected at the college? And they always say, I don't know who to connect to at the college sometimes, right? Like it's massive. And especially if it's one of those college, and let me find that person for you. And I use my contacts and find it and do that follow-up. So it's always like, where are all those connection points we can make?
Well, I think that's like our Access Student Talent Program, which is exactly that, matching small business with students for experiential or for short-term work opportunities. So using, and I guess maybe this is the broader theme. I mean, you got immigrants, which is a huge untapped resource, and will, as immigration starts to ramp back up, will be one of those pockets. But students is another one, and it doesn't need to be full co-op. It can be any number of things that can help a business with from specific operational things to strategic ideas around where they're going to go next in terms of their own business. But other opportunities too, and you must deal with this is that people don't often think about right off the get. Hiring an immigrant or hiring someone with a disability, those are great opportunities. There can be some, it's not the reason to do it, but there's some programs that can help you with the modest, and most hiring of someone with a disability would be, $100 or $200 or less to accommodate them in most cases. But is that another source of where we have to get out of our old traditional mindset of saying, I'm just going to post it on my website and I know I'll all kinds of interest or CVs coming in, you have to kind of try some new things and try alternative strategies?
You do. You really have to try alternative strategies. And the number one question I've been asking is, who are you not connecting with? So you mentioned students, you mentioned immigrants, there's Making Sense of Abilities, which has tons of resources on how to hire a person with a disability. Have you connected with the Anishinaabe or or NEPAM, which works with Indigenous youth and Indigenous people across the Waterloo region? So it's starting to look at who's not applying. And I think that's the piece that becomes so important is there are these talent pools with really amazing people sitting in them, and they just need that shot. And I think as employers, we have to kind of go back to that thought process that, you know what, if I can find that right person who's motivated and looks like they're talented, we can teach them. And I think that's kind of a new mindset. The other mindset is, for the first time, I'd say human resources is marketing. We have to market ourselves as employers. Who are we? Do we have value propositions? Do we know what we want out of our employees? What are our values? All these things are really telling people who we are as employers and what we commit to, because it is a relationship. And I think as employers, we have to start realizing that we're in relationships with people, and it's short term, it could be long term, but it is a relationship, and we kind of have to explain who we are and lay it all out on the table and be open and transparent. There's
I think it just seems like for forever, but pre-pandemic, there was lots of people looking for work, or so it seemed, and it was an employer's market where there was always more than enough people to choose from for the jobs that it seemed to be. I think we're in a complete mirror opposite to where we were 3 years ago, or 2.5, whatever, it seems like forever, 2 years ago. But I guess one of the things that's changed, and we've kind of talked around this, what's changed with you've had lots of conversations with both employers, but also with job seekers. For those that are seeking jobs, what's changed in their own mindset? I mean, they must have, and I see this in just about every setting, people's view of what work is and what you're offering and how you're going to do your work and the accommodations you're going to make, whether it's virtually or otherwise, must have changed significantly. I mean, I know it with our own organization. We've been working at home for 21 months now, or 20 months. What's the change that you, as you think about the job seekers? What's changed for them?
I think what's changed for most job seekers is they want a job that fits their life. They don't want their life to fit around their job anymore. And there is still that struggle there and that tension. And I think this is where employers and job seekers are kind of not on the same page. When we talk about the future of work trends, we talk about, gig jobs, and we talk about being, willing to transition. And it was a lot of employers, what they're expecting out of their employees. And we've hit a point now where the employees are, because of the pandemic, are saying, yeah, that's what I want. And employers are like, wait, I thought I had 3 years to prep for this. And you don't. We've had 20 months, as you said. So it really is, I think we had time, we thought, to transition, and now job seekers are there. They're like, yeah, I do want something that lets me do my side gig. I want something that's going to let me, use my skills and grow and develop. And I think when we think of those things, we think of those as challenges as employers. But I think we also have to see them as really great opportunities to create more interesting and intriguing businesses and processes and procedures, and to attract unique talent to ourselves. We will be challenged with retention. And the big issue around retention, if you are having retention issues, when we spoke to job seekers, is your coworkers. So coworker mixes are so important, and who's connecting with who, and supervisors respecting and treating people with dignity. So there's some big issues we can look at as employers and say, oh, you know what? I don't go over what the harassment policy looks like. Maybe we need to go over this with all of our supervisors and bring them in for a session so everyone fully understands the steps, so that everybody in our in our organization really feels listened to. Like these are things we can start to look at as employers because we know they're important to job seekers. And you mentioned the Great Resignation earlier. So if I could put that into some perspective in Waterloo Region, if we really have 40% of everybody who's employed thinking about changing their jobs, that's 130,000 people. And some of them have already done it, right? So we don't know how many are left who are thinking about that great change. So for employers, it'll be a lot about people. And for job seekers, it'll really be about, who am I interested in going to? How am I building that career path? How are my skills going to grow? And is this a fit for my life? And I think we kind of thought that was coming a little bit with the future of work trends, and it just seems to be here so much faster.
Yeah, I recall, and this is, we have been working for about a year, and I think you were part of that, U of W, Communitech, Manulife, talking about the future of work and learning. And I remember having those conversations and saying, well, for small business, we're talking about it and saying a big company can talk about the future of work and learning and doing things differently, but it's more difficult for a small business, which I think is true in normal times. And then there's a pandemic and they got no choice. And small businesses and medium-sized businesses do what they do best, is they just adapt and they get on with it. So that future of work and learning that you talked about is now. I think everyone gets that we're not going back to the way it was. So when you talked about the job seekers, what does that mean for the employer themselves? If and my employees are the same as everyone else, they would prefer to continue to work at home at least at least half the time, if not more. They expect to have technology when they're working at home, that they can do it at home, that they have more flexibility in their hours. All of which is reasonable. And I think what's proven in this environment is that people can work at home and be productive. I think there was a great worry by many employers that if that was happening, would everyone be, having a Netflix binge every day and not doing their work? And I don't think that has been borne out in any way, shape, or form. So, we talk about the job seekers and what they're sort of seeking from the employer. What does it mean for the employer themselves? What do they have to do to make sure they're getting what they need for their business? And can make some of those accommodations, because that could be the difference between someone saying, hey, yeah, they're giving me these options for either input, work hours, being flexible when I need to take care of my kid, or going, needs some flexibility in their schedule. I mean, are those the types of things that are now part and parcel, where you have to look at how you can be more malleable or adaptable to the workforce?
I think that you're 100% on track there. I think as employers, and being a small one myself, those are things that I committed to. Like, what can I do to make this easier on you? What can I do? What do you need from me? And so those are the sorts of things that I think as employers, we can open up those discussion points and say, okay, here's the thought process. So I'll be frank, my organization, we are in 60% of the week, out 40%. We are rural. So if you have internet problems, stay home. So we're open to that. And so we're being flexible as an organization. We can do that. But for every organization out there, look at, can you be flexible? How can you be flexible? And I think also having some of those conversations with people who aren't in your industry to see how they're doing it differently, and then figuring out if you can bring it to your industry, may be advantageous. I remember hearing about a manufacturing company that has people sign up for shifts by app. And I'm like, wow, how do you run? But they're not having challenges. So like, how do you approach that company? Say, how did you do that? How did you make that happen? How did you create that flexibility for your workers? And same thing, you have to start going through your procedures, your policies, and looking at them through that lens. We did a couple of series about HR policies and working from home, and how do you engage a team remotely and it works if you're doing hybrid as well. So it's just unique ways to start thinking, because your staff are already thinking differently. So as an employer, I think we're playing a little bit of catch up.
Well, I think you've just hit on at least one of the strands for our manufacturing summit in the spring of 2022, because there's all kinds of elements of that. That's something that everyone has to learn from each other of how they've gotten through being less traditional, more adaptive to. Now, there's always going to be some that have to be, and I guess this is one of the challenges. If you're a restaurant, you can't have a virtual waitress or waiter or bartender. Somebody's got to be there. But there are pieces inside every organization where you can get talent. They don't necessarily have to be geographically based if they can work remotely. That actually presents an opportunity. Um, in terms of being able to hire, not necessarily from your geographic boundaries. So let's talk about that in terms of the recruiting. What are the strategies do you have for employers who are trying to recruit now? Like if you said, look, you're looking for, you've got some gaps and you have these 10 jobs to fill in 3 different job functions. What's the thing that they should do?
The first thing I'm recommending is after you've looked at who you're missing, is look at your pay. What are you paying, honestly? I get a lot of people call me and tell me they're paying competitively, and then I'll go to some of the stats and I'm like, actually, you're paying in like the bottom 40%. And they're like, what? I am. So now you understand your struggle. And that's what you have to do. You have to understand what your struggle points are. For example, last month, 14,500 postings in Waterloo Region. The median wage of jobs that were posted was $19. And that's up 50 cents from September. So like we're moving that fast. And those are some things that employers need to know. And you can always contact me at the Workforce Planning Board, and I'll, shoot me the things you're interested in. I can try and direct you to how to find that. But I think it's being open and honest so that that if you're paying a little less, then what are the bonuses to bring people in? And it's starting to identify those things. Okay, maybe I pay a little bit less, but you get your birthday off or maybe your kid's birthday off. Like there's those things you can do trade-off wise, or maybe I offer an extra week of holidays. And those are the intangibles that people appreciate beyond the pay. And so it's starting to look at that structure and then starting to look at your recruitment process. That idea of 2 interviews before you get a job is, I was speaking to Greg over at the chamber in Cambridge, and he said he was talking to someone, and when he did some follow-ups, someone got hired just from their resume. So like that's how fast we're moving right now. It's probably short term, but right now that's where we're at. So it's time to look at what can we do in our recruitment processes to tell people exactly who we are, give them the pay straight up front, tell them exactly what they're going to be doing, and then tell them this is when resumes will close. You will hear from us on this date, and then stick to it. Because that's how anyone who's really truly interested in your job, they'll hold out for you if they're really that interested. So I think we need to start looking at what that communication looks like to job seekers. Yeah.
So I mean, I guess one of the things, obviously, part of what the chamber does is to help make connections for folks, but that's in some measure business to business, right? Making those connections within business. But part of your job is to connect job seekers, but to businesses. But there are other organizations too, whether it's Excellence in Manufacturing Consortium, we've got the Center for Family Business, who are our partners. Along with the Immigration Partnership and others on things like Manufacturing Summit and a wide variety of opportunities to address the talent issue. What are some of those other organizations? So you do but you work with all kinds of organizations. Who are some of the other ones that when you're looking and saying, hey, be in touch with us. Here's what I would recommend. Here, I'm going to give you the websites or the emails for this, and this organization, depending on what sector you're in, and give you some helpful tips. Recognizing back to the earlier comment, most of the people that will be watching this and most of the people that will watch the webinar are that entrepreneur like you or I, where we may be the head of the organization, but you're doing a lot of stuff. You're doing payroll and you're doing HR and you're doing project work along with your staff. So you don't have a lot of time, but you need to give them. I think one of the things we need to bring out of this is what are those specific tools that are. Oh, I go to this website. I mean, we got to give them the ABCs of who to talk to at this moment to help them get the talent that they need.
Yeah, I often start with the Employment Ontario group. That's their mandate, it's what they're funded to do. So we often start, with the Lutherwood, Career, Cambridge Center. You've named a couple of others, Geolic and Conestoga and the Y. So start there. They have a pool of talent, and then from there it's kind of industry based. So sometimes I'll say, you mentioned EMC, which is a great group, Excellence Manufacturing Consortium. Sometimes depending on the industry, there's lots of industry associations out there that can kind of give a perspective of what's happening recruitment wise in their industry. So, it may be an RTO, so Regional Tourism Organization, or Minto. She can put them in touch with that. And they can kind of figure out what's happening broader so they understand why it's happening locally. So sometimes it really depends on who's calling me as to where I may send them otherwise. And like I said, I do send them to the post-secondary institutions. If they're looking for students, it's always great to send them to like the BEP, the Business Education Partnership Waterloo Region. They have a lot of connections into the schools, and the team over there will put them in contact with their local high school, because maybe they're just looking for somebody to digitize, records, and that's sitting there at a photocopier and doing stuff. So very great introduction to what business looks like, and getting the sense of what it is. So it kind of depends on what they're looking for exactly in their industry.
Anytime you can get a student, even if it's for 2 weeks or 3 weeks at a time, we're telling folks, get them in, you can get some great work done on whether it's research or getting some of the unique challenges you have in your business that may not right now be filling that hiring need. But that's someone who's going to graduate in a year or two, and it gives you a warm lead on someone saying, "Hey, Charlene, we appreciate the 3 or 4 weeks. If you're looking for a job when you graduate, come and talk to us because we'd love to have you. Or I have a summer job for you," because they're all looking for that as well, to have that job experience. So another great way to sort of make some connections, and that's partly what the chambers do, and right across the board is, we want to make connections for people, whether it's workers to business or businesses amongst themselves. Let's I got a few more questions before we run out of time. One is on the retention, and we've been talking about the recruitment side of this, but you mentioned earlier some of the things that almost as a recruitment tool, which is, wouldn't necessarily have to be going from $18 to 25, but you say, I'm offering $20, but I'm giving an extra stat holiday or your kid's birthday, or, that retention stuff of starting with the people that you already got and saying, what I can't afford is for have any of them leave to go and take something else. I better keep what I got. Does that become almost a recruitment tool by saying, we've learned, here's what we're doing? Because as you go out, part of your recruitment is we're giving, a better combination of benefits and salary and lifestyle choice for our employees, because that's something that people can say, I think I want to be a part of that, especially in a tight labor market. Is it almost, it's not chicken and egg, it's both at the same time? Is that a reasonable way to approach it?
That would be a reasonable way to approach it. Like, yeah, look at how do you keep your current staff, and however you're keeping your current staff is your recruiting tool, because if you're keeping them, it's successful, and you're having people who you have a structure that people will be attracted to, and your staff are one of your recruitment tools. They really are. Like, if I'm on LinkedIn and I see somebody just talking about how much they love their job or how they've done something really unique and exciting, I'm going to look up the company and I'm going to get curious. Or if I hear somebody at a party talking about, well, we're not allowed parties, but you know what I mean. And I hear them talking about it, I'm going to say, hey, where do you work? And what's that like? So I see a lot of signing bonuses, or if you can refer a friend, those are tools we can use as employers to look forward to how we attract more people. I've started taking that approach, and we got through the first year of the pandemic, and the first thing I did was hopped on LinkedIn and tagged all my staff and thanked them and for all the work they put in for a year. Something that small can have a big ripple effect, because then they feel appreciated, and people who feel appreciated are positive people. And you want to somehow combat the reviews on Google and Glassdoor, which are starting to happen, right? So this is one way to do it. In person and talking can sometimes have a bigger effect than those reviews.
All right, we're almost out of time. I just see in the chat here, and I think we'll make sure that when we send out the link, we get with the recording for this and post it. Making sense of abilities, and I think you referenced that. Well, Tim Fry, our friend, has posted that in the chat, as well as Nora Whittington from the Immigration Partnership has already said the YMCA and the Connector Program, the KW Multicultural Center, and Reception House are great ways to connect with immigrants. So that's one tool, but certainly be in touch with your organization or Immigration Partnership and others are a great resource in the community. So as we wrap up, maybe I can ask it in a couple, so I don't ask one question in 4 parts, but let's start with this. What are the top 3 things that you would recommend for an employer who is looking in this tight labor market? What are the, if they said, geez, I got to get started, what are the top 3 things that you think they should do to get started?
1, what's your pay? Know where you stand. And 2, figure out your recruitment process. How do you make it open, faster, quicker, and easy for everyone to understand? And number 3 would be, who are you not connecting with? I think those are the 3 pieces. If you can answer those open and honestly, and you start pursuing those resources, will help you. That openness as an employer to just shift. So my top 3.
Okay, and so that's actually that is something that would stick in people's mind. Those are 3 great things that you can go through your own checklist. So you got to get all those ducks in a row, so that when I have a live one that is maybe interested, I can answer all those questions. Okay, and the last question: who are the 3 or 4 organizations or the resources that you should use, whether it's to answer those questions or to tap into pools that and I think you've highlighted this, pools of talent that you may not have put your line into the water yet for?
I would say check your Employment Ontario service providers. Check findyourjob.ca, see if your jobs are listed there, and if they're not, connect with us and ask us how you can be connected. Nora just put in ethnocultural groups in Waterloo Region, but I would say any of the mentoring programs that could be at the Y or WR Connectors, or connecting with NPAAMB and asking about some of the Indigenous youth who are out there and links to work. So just looking at some of those groups that are have targeted organizations that work with them.
All right, we're going to leave it there. And I, again, for those watching and for when we put this recording out, we'll include some of those links to those organizations, because there's lots of resources to help businesses with their needs as we move forward. Okay, listen, thank you, Charlene, for joining us today. Always, we've worked closely together for many years. Appreciate the work that you and your gang do to connect employers with the resources that they need, which is the talent that drive their business. So thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate you being with us.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me kind of explain to everyone what's going on, because doing this is much easier than personal calls to everyone.
Yeah, no, it's a great way. Everyone needs to understand the context we're in and what the tools are that they can do to navigate through it. So thank you for that. Thank you to our title sponsor for the series, Manulife. Our platinum sponsor of the series is, of course, the Immigration Partnership of Waterloo Region. November's sponsor is Waterloo Economic Development Corporation. And again, to Charlene for the Workforce Planning Board. Finally, to all of you for joining us today. As a reminder, we do host a new Business Success Series session every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Join us next week for an engaging discussion about the benefits to businesses and students when they work together through work-integrated learning opportunities. And that's part of our Access Student Talent Program. Great opportunity for small businesses to connect with students looking for job experience on short project work, which we talked a little bit about today. And following the discussion, there will be a Q&A session next week where you can ask the panelists about your learnings and your issues specifically. Discover how you can explore working with a student to support your business and help build the future of work. We hope to see you then. For full details and to register, as always, visit greaterkwchamber.com. Please do share this series with your friends and colleagues. Join us every Wednesday afternoon for another edition of the Business Success Series. Because you want to join us, because if it's Wednesday, it's the Business Success Series. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great afternoon.